Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for webinar 2 in our Finance and Insurance Learn at Lunch series. Today, we are joined by our guest speaker, Sarah Lean, who is Senior Cloud Solution Architect at Microsoft. We're delighted to have Sarah on board this afternoon, who will be presenting a piece around how to gain control of your costs and maximise your Azure investment. So without further ado, I will hand over to Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you, Adam, for that introduction. So yeah, as Adam said, we're going to be talking about managing your cost in Azure. And I think if we look back to the session Leon did last week about Cloud Centre of Excellence, he was mentioning that cultural shift that you have to go on when you adopt the cloud. And to be honest, it's no different when you're thinking about the cost of it as well. That traditional procurement model and process that you're used to on-prem is slightly different inside Azure when we think about the cloud cost and how we manage that and how we think about that, both as IT professionals and as businesses as well. So hopefully today I'll take you on a journey and give you some hints and tips on how to manage your costs and control them as well. I'm happy to take any questions, so if you pop them in the Q&A box or the chat box inside Teams, we will gather them at the end, and Adam will help me work my way through them. So feel free to ask questions as we go. So as I said, today we're going to be talking about cost, and the agenda is roughly around cost optimising your workloads, understanding and controlling your costs, and then we'll share some resources and some next steps for you as well at the end. Then when I was researching for this presentation, I came across this report from Flexera, the 2023 State of Cloud report, and it highlights that managing cost spend is something that lots of organisations are focusing on. And actually, when I started to dig into this, it's the 7th year in a row that managing cost and understanding cost in the cloud is something that organisations are focusing on. So it's still a key area, and it's still an area where there's lots of improvements to be made. And there are things that we can help you with at Microsoft. There's lots of frameworks and there's lots of tools that we can help you with. One of the big things is optimising your workloads and trying to focus on making the most of the budget you've been allocated to deliver something that the business needs. And being able to do that, there's a few things that you need to understand. And again, as I was saying at the start, that kind of cultural mindset change about how you design things and how you implement and optimise and run your workloads is really important. Now, two tools that I use, probably on a daily basis actually, are the Azure Pricing Calculator and the Total Cost of Ownership Calculator. Now, the Azure Pricing Calculator is a great tool for any conversation that you're having or trying to understand. I open it, like I say, most days with customers to either understand how a big project will affect their budget. So maybe they're looking at using Azure Virtual Desktop and they're trying to understand the costs and what that would be potentially on a budget, just even on an initial kind of finger in the air figure as well. But it's also great for understanding if a customer has some questions about, say, the Azure App Service. I'm trying to understand the difference between the plans and how you can use them maybe in your production environment and which plan you would use in a test and a dev environment. It gives you that great insight into what it would cost for your services to run. Now, something that many of you may already know is that if you log in to the Azure Pricing Calculator and you have an enterprise agreement with us, the price will actually reflect what your enterprise agreement is. So if you didn't log into the Azure Pricing Calculator, you would just get the pay-as-you-go cost, the kind of public cost. However, if you sign in, it will pull through your enterprise agreement details and give you that real cost for you as an organisation. So that's something to bear in mind as well if you're using it. But also, as I said, there's a total cost of ownership calculator, and that's fantastic if you're trying to understand as an organisation how you move a workload or even your entire data centre to Azure and what the cost implications are or the savings are. And it's great for those organisations as well who are maybe not aware of how much their physical on-prem data centre actually costs them to run. Because sometimes, let's face it, those data centre costs are hidden inside the office building costs, or we don't get access to the electricity electricity bill, for example, so we don't know how to actually cost how a workload, what exactly the cost of a workload is in our data centre. But using information that we've gathered from other customers and our own experiences, we've got this total cost of ownership calculator that can help guide you on that costing of your on-prem environment and then what it would look like in Azure as well. So great things to bookmark and have handy with when you're looking at different things within your environments. Now, alongside those pricing calculators, we have the well-architected framework. Now, the well-architected framework is architectural guidance and best practices to improve your workloads across 5 different areas. So we've got cost optimization, operational excellence, performance efficiency, reliability, and security. Now, today we're focusing on cost, but spoiler alert, next week in the webinar, we're going to be talking about operational excellence. So be sure to tune in for that next week. But the cost optimization pillar can really help you understand your IT solutions and driving that business goal properly to align with the budget that you have. And understanding how your architectural and design choices can actually affect the cost. And again, alongside the Azure pricing calculator, the well-architected framework can be great tools for you when you're doing that architectural diagram. And when we look at the well-architected framework, it puts cost optimization front and foremost at your kind of architectural design stage. That's something you should be thinking about when you're putting pen to paper to architect your design. It shouldn't be something that you look at after implementation. Of course, you will look at it after implementation, but if you start it early in your process, along with your technical requirements and your business requirements, then it can really help with your cost optimization later when the workloads are going live. The well-architected framework also guides you around having to ask your stakeholders and your business users those pertinent questions about how to design the workload and what they actually need. Because let's face it, every stakeholder, every end user is going to tell you that their workload is a gold premium tier application and it needs to be alive 24/7, 365 days a year, and it requires the most availability as well. But when they understand how much that actually costs, they can start to pull it back a little bit and really give you that proper indication about what their workload needs. So make sure you're digging into that and asking those right questions, because those questions can help with your cost savings as well. Now, once you're running your workload inside Azure, the Azure Advisor is something that can really help you understand, again, how to make the best use of your workload. Now, aligning with the well-architected framework, the Azure Advisor portal will give you guidance on those 5 pillars. So reliability, security, performance, operational excellence, and of course, cost savings. The Azure Advisor portal pulls in data from your workloads and then gives you some recommendations. So it can look back on, say, the last 30 days or even 90 days of your workload and tell you things that you need to improve upon. In terms of the cost management, it will tell you things like a storage account or an Azure disk is orphaned and not being used or not attached to a virtual machine. And if you deleted that or got rid of it, then you would save X amount per month or per year. And that can be very beneficial. All those like £5 or $5 amounts can actually add up across the course of the month. But it can also do bigger things. It can look at your virtual machine usage and try and tell you whether you can look at shutting it down, resizing it, potentially putting on Azure reservations, savings plans. Gives you lots of data and lots of touch points where you can go and decide what to do in the future for it. Can even highlight things like express routes that are not being used. I'm not sure how you accidentally deploy an express route and not use it, but it would flag that up for you as well. So again, it can help you with those things, especially if you have a large sprawling environment across multiple departments. It can really give you that information. For me, the Azure Advisor portal is great for giving me that data to have those conversations with different people within the organisation and the IT department. Long gone are the days where I would have a conversation with someone and saying you have to right size your virtual machine, it's not being used, the CPU utilisation is at 1%, and they would push back on me and I wouldn't be able to give them the evidence to that as well. With Azure Advisor, I now have that evidence, so they really can't dispute it. They can't say that I'm lying or I've misunderstood what their workload is doing. I have that data, so I can have those informed conversations with people inside the business. Now, Azure Hybrid Benefit is something that has been around for a while, but it's been evolving, and I want to make sure that people understand where it is on its journey and what it's actually available for. So Azure Hybrid Benefit can take advantage of your existing licenses that you're maybe using on-prem already and take them to Azure with you as well. Now, with licensing, it can be a bit complicated, so I've maybe oversimplified that. However, with certain license types, you can save money by using that existing license you've already purchased and use it inside Azure. So meaning you only have to pay for the compute cost of your virtual machine. You don't have to repay for your operating system license. Now, you can take advantage of this with Windows, Linux, and even SQL virtual machines. So definitely have a look at what your licensing agreements are currently on-prem and see if they apply in the Azure world as well. There are also benefits if you're using AKS, so Azure Kubernetes Service, and Azure Stack HCI as well. So definitely have a look at that licensing requirement, dig into what that can help you and what can be taken into Azure, because there's significant savings that can be made for you if you do utilise that existing license agreement that you have. Now, on top of the Azure Hybrid Benefit, you often hear Microsoft talk about Azure Reservations. And Azure Reservations are a way of helping you save money for that long-term workload that you're running. So with an Azure reservation, you say that you're going to run a workload for a year or 3 years, and you're committing to keeping that workload in Azure for that period of time. And we give you a significant saving because of that. And it can really reduce your cost quite significantly, especially if you attach it with an Azure hybrid license. I think we quote up to 65% or 80% saving can be made if you use those two together. So again, it's really worth looking into and understanding. Now, with your reservations, one of the things people often ask me is how do they actually figure out if they need an Azure reservation and how do you apply it? Well, you can look into Azure Advisor. It will tell you, it will give you that data about how you can use a reservation within your workloads. You can also have a look at the cost management portal, or you can even look at some of the API data that you can pull out from Azure and create your own reports as well. Now, with an Azure reservation, you don't have to speak to anybody. You can buy that Azure reservation through the Azure portal. As long as you have the right rights within the portal experience, you can buy an Azure reservation. Now, Azure reservations aren't just for your virtual machines. That's one of the utilizations that we see customers use it for, but it can apply to things like app services, Azure Data Factory, Azure Database for MySQL. It could be Azure VMware solution, Databricks, dedicated hosts, storage, SQL databases, Synapse Analytics, and of course, your virtual machines. So there's a lot of scope with the reservations. The one thing that we do say to customers with reservations is in January 2024, we are changing some of the terms and conditions around licensing and reservations and their flexibility. So at the moment, you do have the ability to swap a reservation. So say you purchased a 3-year reservation for a certain virtual machine in a certain region and decided halfway through that term that you were no longer going to run that workload. We do allow you to change that reservation to something else that would suit your environment. However, after January 2024, there is no flexibility. Once you buy it, that's what it's going to be. So it's something to bear in mind looking forward and going into the future and understanding now whether you want to purchase a reservation, because existing ones will have that flexibility, but going forward, the terms and conditions, as I said, will change. And this is where we're seeing a lot of customers actually start to talk to us and ask questions around Azure savings plans for compute. Now, this was announced in October 2022, and I think it's just starting to come onto people's radars around the use and the flexibility that this offers. Again, if you are committed to certain workloads, certain compute workloads, then an Azure savings plan can again significantly bring down your costs for you. Again, you have that commit, so you can say, I want an Azure compute savings plan for a year or 3 years, but you don't have to specify the Azure region or the type of compute that you're actually going to use the savings plan for. So a savings plan will give you a discount on an Azure virtual machine, an Azure dedicated host, Azure container instances, Azure function premium plans, or some Azure app services. Now, there are some things that are excluded, some SKUs that are excluded from the savings plan, but overall, it gives you that flexibility across your compute workloads. And it's quite clever in terms of how that applies the savings as well. So say during the day you have virtual machines running, the savings plan could be applied to those virtual machines automatically with the Azure portal. And then when those virtual machines get turned off, the savings plan could maybe move to an app service plan that you're running that's more 24/7. And it does that all automatically for you so that you're getting the best discount across your savings plan. And this flexibility is what is driving people to actually use this more than their Azure reservations, because it gives you that flexibility, especially if your plans are mid-flight, if you're in the middle of a modernisation project. So right now you're running all virtual machines, and then you're going to be moving to, say, container instances in the next year or so, but you still want to have that savings plan available. So this is where it can really help. So definitely look into it if you haven't heard about it. There's a lot of flexibility here. And again, you can just purchase this inside the Azure portal. You don't have to do anything special to be able to grab these savings. Now again, when I was researching for this presentation, I came across this stat. So 7 out of 10 companies aren't sure what they spend their cloud budget on. That's quite a scary stat, I think, and I think that's not a good position for us to be in. I think as IT professionals, as people who are adopting the cloud, we really need to shift our mindset to being aware of what's happening with our costs. We need to keep this in mind and educate ourselves on how to do it. Previously, like I was saying, on that traditional procurement model, we would be given a budget for our hardware, maybe £15,000 to go and buy some servers, some storage, some networking equipment, and that would be the budget. And we would stay within that. And then once that was done, we wouldn't think about it again. We wouldn't think about it again until it was time to refresh. We wouldn't understand the depreciation, the cost of running that every day. We wouldn't be getting bills. We wouldn't have access to the costs. Now, inside the cloud, we have that access, we have that ability to report on cloud spend, we have that ability to actually show what's happening, we have that ability to affect what is being sent and spent across our budget. And we need to educate ourselves as technical professionals to understand those costs and be closer to what our budget is and how we are using it to best meet the business's requirements. And this is where things like the Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure can really help you. Now, the Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure has been around for several years now, and over time it's grown. It's got lots of good practices and guidance across a whole host of things. Whether you're starting your cloud, whether you're wanting to have conversations with your C-level executives around moving to the cloud, or whether you're looking for cost optimization advice and guidance around how to think about this and how to have those conversations with the senior leadership team or even your finance team. There's lots of guidance around how to start to manage it and be more proactive with it. So one of the things that we encourage people to do is to understand where their spend is actually going. So we encourage you again to use things like tags on your resources so that you can tag them and say that the owner of this resource, the person responsible for it, is Sarah, and put that tag. Or using things like cost centres or department names. So if you've got an application that the HR team have purchased and are running inside your Azure environment, you could tag it HR. And then when you are doing the reporting, you can filter by tags and you can understand whether I'm spending lots of money, whether HR are spending lots of money, whether there's anomalies there, whether they're going over their budget, and you can start to really granularly dig into that. We're seeing lots of organisations start to cross-charge their IT spend as well to departments and different cost centres, and that's where tagging can help. Whether you're actually doing that cross-charge and asking these departments for the money back for their workloads, or whether you're even just giving them visibility about what you're actually doing as an IT department to suit and give them the things that they use, the tools that they use, and give them visibility, tags can really help you along that way. We also have guidance around how to use Azure policy and how to use it to potentially put in those guardrails that stop people by accidentally deploying the wrong thing. So I think we've all been at that stage where we've accidentally deployed a really large virtual machine or left something running that we didn't want to. Azure policy can put in those guardrails to stop that happening, and just to give that safety net for all of us, because it is really easy to mistype something inside your infrastructure as code or to scroll down too far on a drop-down list inside the portal. So we say put in those guardrails, stop people being able to deploy the largest virtual machines that you don't have budget for, or stopping people from deploying, say, express routes by mistake. So you might already have one in your environment, you don't need any more, so put in a blocker so that people can't willy-nilly just deploy things that you're not comfortable with. And these guardrails are not about stopping people from doing things inside the environment, not about blocking innovation. It's about safeguarding you all from that spend and potential budget breaking spend by mistake. As that stat said, 7 out of 10 companies don't know where their budget is going, and this is where the Azure Cost Management and Billing portal can really help you. And it does take some getting used to, but it is a key thing to check into. It's a key thing to have a look at and understand across your environment. There's a lot of information inside the cost management portal, and it does take a while to figure out how you want to report on that, but you can create your own custom reports and save them. And you can have a report as an IT professional, and you can have a report for your finance team. And you can even give them access to the cost management portal without them having any access to the actual resources. They will just be able to go in and look at the budget and look at the cost and be able to interrogate that data. So that's great for giving that visibility and spreading that across the business, so that it's not just yourself or the IT department that's focusing on the cost as well. It's not just reporting that the Azure Cost Management portal has, though. It has the ability to be able to set up budgets, so you can get an email alert saying that the budget is 60% spent, and you can start to action it, start to understand and look at it as well. So there's little tips and tricks inside this portal that will help you with your cost management once you start to get into the flow of it. Now, I've talked a lot today, but in summary, some of the things I want to take away from today is know about and take advantage of the discounts. Make sure you're making the most of everything that's there on offer for you. Monitor and review your costs regularly. Keep that as a monthly cadence or a quarterly cadence and understand what's happening in your environment. Put some controls in place so that people can't accidentally spend too much by mistake. And ensure everybody understands the design implications and they're aware of the cost when they're doing things within the cloud, and make that an education piece across the board. Now, if you need help, Cloud Direct are available to help you. They can carry out an optimisation assessment and they'll present it back both from a technical and a business point of view and help recommend some next steps that your organisation can take with them. So do reach out to them and speak to them about how they can help you with your cost management and optimisation piece within Azure. I've mentioned a ton of things today and I probably could have spent half an hour on each topic alone, but if you want to dig into more things that I've spoke about and understand how they can help you in your environment, go to aka.ms/cost control, and there's lots of links there that you can click on and dig into the documentation that I mentioned earlier on. Thank you so much for your time today, folks. I hope it's been useful. And like I say, if there's any questions, please do put them in the chat and Adam can read them out to me. Adam, have we got any questions at all?
Hi, Sarah. Not currently at the minute.
Awesome. But yeah, any questions, folks, put them in the chat and we can grab them for you. But if not, no worries. I'll put that slide up with the link just in case anybody needs to grab that one.
Okay, not sure we might get any questions in, so thank you very much, Sarah, for presenting today, and I'm happy to end the webinar here. Cool. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Adam.